the CIA secretly drugged American citizens with LSD. Not enemies, not prisoners of war. American citizens. Ordinary people, hospital patients, college students, mental health patients, who had no idea what was happening to them. The program cost the equivalent of $95 million in today's money, and it ran for over 2 decades. But here's the question that should keep you up at night. How did the most powerful intelligence agency in the world justify doing this to its own people? And what happened to the ones who never recovered? That answer is buried in a story most Americans still don't fully know. And by the end of this, you will. The year is 1950. The Cold War is not a metaphor. It is a daily, existential terror. The Soviet Union has just tested its first nuclear weapon. China has fallen to communism. And inside the CIA's headquarters in Langley, Virginia, a specific fear is taking hold. One that has nothing to do with bombs. American prisoners of war returning from Korea are acting strange, saying things they shouldn't say, confessing to crimes they didn't commit, denouncing their own country on camera with flat, hollow eyes. The CIA calls it brainwashing. And they are terrified the Soviets have cracked the code on human thought itself. On April 20th, 1950, CIA Director Roscoe Hillenkoetter approves a classified program called Project BLUEBIRD. Its mission? Figure out how the enemy is controlling minds, and then do it better. This is not fringe science in a back room. This is official CIA policy. Funded, staffed, sanctioned at the highest level. BLUEBIRD quietly becomes Project Artichoke. Researchers experiment with hypnosis, electroconvulsive therapy, and early psychoactive drugs. They are looking for a shortcut into the human mind, a key that unlocks total compliance. They don't find it, not yet. But in April 1953, a new CIA director takes his seat. His name is Allen Dulles. He is sharper, more aggressive, and far less cautious than his predecessors. And he has just heard about a Swiss chemist who accidentally discovered a compound in 1943 that can shatter a person's perception of reality in under an hour. Lysergic acid diethylamide, LSD. On April 13th, 1953, a Monday, Allen Dulles signs a classified memorandum authorizing a new program. He gives it a code name, MKUltra. And he hands the keys to a 35-year-old chemist from the Bronx named Sidney Gottlieb, a man who walks with a limp, stutters slightly when he speaks, and is about to become the most dangerous scientist the United States government has ever employed. What Dulles doesn't know, what no one in that building knows, is that MKUltra isn't going to find a weapon against the Soviets. It's going to become a weapon against America itself. Sidney Gottlieb receives $300,000 in initial funding in 1953. That's $3.2 million in today's money. And he is told, essentially, figure out mind control. No constraints, no oversight, no paper trail if you can avoid it. Gottlieb is a true believer. He genuinely thinks LSD might be the key, that the right dose, in the right setting, administered with precision, could make a person infinitely suggestible, could turn an enemy agent into an unwitting informant, could wipe a memory clean like a blackboard. The first experiments are controlled. Volunteers inside the CIA, officers who consent, more or less, to taking LSD in monitored settings. Gottlieb himself takes it. He documents the hallucinations, the paranoia, the dissolution of self. He is fascinated. But here's what no one saw coming. Gottlieb decides that controlled experiments aren't enough. If you want to know how LSD affects a person who doesn't know they've been dosed, a person under real stress, in a real environment, you can't ask for volunteers, because the moment they know, the experiment is compromised. So he stops asking. In 1953, a CIA operative named Frank Olson, attends a work retreat at a cabin in Deep Creek Lake, Maryland. On November 19th, Gottlieb covertly doses Olson's glass of Cointreau with LSD. Olson has no idea. Within hours, he is experiencing a severe psychological break. He becomes paranoid, withdrawn, convinced something is deeply wrong. Because something is. 9 days later, Frank Olson falls from the 10th floor of the Statler Hotel in New York City. He is 43 years old. He leaves behind a wife and 3 children. The CIA tells his family it was a suicide. They say nothing about the LSD. Frank Olson's family doesn't learn the truth for 22 years. And Olson is not the only one. MKUltra now expands into 150 separate research projects, spread across 80 institutions, universities, hospitals, prisons, and private research facilities. 44 colleges and universities, 15 research foundations, 12 hospitals and clinics. The program operates through front organizations with names like the Society for the Investigation of Human Ecology, fake nonprofits that funnel CIA money to researchers who may or may not know where the funding actually comes from. Stop. Before we go further, you need to understand something. Most of the people being experimented on have no idea they're part of a government program. Psychiatric patients are given LSD and told it's medication. Prisoners are dosed and observed. In one operation called Project Midnight Climax, run out of safe houses in San Francisco and New York, CIA operatives hire sex workers to lure men off the street, drug them with LSD, and watch through two-way mirrors while agents take notes. This is not a rogue operation. This is funded, supervised, and reported back to Langley. The total expenditure over the program's life reaches $10 million. In today's dollars, $95 million. Spent on dosing, manipulating, and in some cases permanently damaging the minds of people who trusted the institutions that were supposed to protect them. By the early 1960s, MKUltra is the most expansive covert research program in CIA history. Gottlieb has become its architect, its enforcer, and its true believer. The program is at its peak. And that is exactly when it starts to crack. Remember that question from the opening? How did the CIA justify drugging its own citizens? The answer, when you dig into the declassified memos, is chilling in its simplicity. They didn't justify it. They hid it. The internal logic inside MKUltra was this: the Soviets are already doing this to us. We know they're experimenting on prisoners, on defectors, on civilians. If we don't match them, if we don't surpass them, we lose the psychological arms race. And losing that race, in the minds of men like Dulles and Gottlieb, meant losing the Cold War itself. The ends justified the means. The citizens being dosed were, in their calculus, acceptable losses, but the cracks are forming. By 1964, Sidney Gottlieb is losing confidence in LSD as a mind control tool. The drug is too unpredictable. It doesn't produce compliance. It produces chaos. Some subjects become paranoid. Some become violent. Some, like Frank Olson, never come back from the edge it pushes them to. MKUltra quietly shifts focus. Hypnosis, sensory deprivation, psychological torture. The program fragments into sub-projects that become harder to track, harder to control. And then, in a single week, in 1973, everything changed. CIA Director Richard Helms learns that a Senate investigation is closing in. On January 31, 1973, his last week in office, Helms orders the destruction of all MKUltra files, boxes of documents, reels of recorded sessions, 20 years of evidence, shredded. Helms later testifies before Congress and says he destroyed the files because they contained sensitive information. He does not say what kind, but Helms makes one mistake. He doesn't know that a small cache of MKUltra financial records, 20,000 documents, has been misfiled in a record storage facility in Warrenton, Virginia. They survive the purge. In 1970, Senator Frank Church convenes the Church Committee, a sweeping investigation into CIA abuses. They find the surviving documents. They begin pulling the thread. By 1977, the story is on the front page of every major newspaper in America. The Senate holds public hearings. Former subjects come forward. Families of the dead demand answers. And now, at the 9-minute mark of this story, we finally have to ask the question that makes MKUltra more than a Cold War footnote. How many people were actually harmed? The honest answer is, we don't know, because Helms destroyed the files. The 20,000 documents that survived represent, at best, a fraction of what existed. Researchers estimate that thousands of people were subjected to MKUltra experiments without their consent. Many were never told. Many never knew why their lives fell apart in the weeks and months after they were treated at a hospital or enrolled in a study. Some of them are still alive today, still living with the consequences of something that was done to them in secret by their own government before they were old enough to understand what consent even meant. The scale of what was lost, both in human terms and in documentary evidence, is something the United States government has never fully accounted for. And the man at the center of it all? Sidney Gottlieb retires in 1973. He moves to a farm in Virginia. He raises goats. He takes folk dancing classes. He is never charged with a crime. He dies on March 7th, 1999, at the age of 80. In 1995, President Bill Clinton stands before a crowd in Washington, D.C., and issues a formal apology to the victims of government radiation experiments. Experiments that ran alongside and overlapped with MKUltra. He acknowledges that the government violated the trust of its own citizens in the name of national security. It is the closest thing to accountability MKUltra ever produces. But here's what the apology doesn't fix. Frank Olson's son, Eric, spends 50 years fighting to prove his father was murdered, not driven to suicide, but pushed out of that hotel window by CIA operatives who feared what a destabilized Olson might say. In 1994, Frank Olson's body is exhumed. A forensic pathologist finds evidence consistent with a blow to the head before the fall. The case is never prosecuted. It remains officially unsolved. The families of MKUltra subjects filed lawsuits. Some won small settlements, most got nothing. The destroyed files made it nearly impossible to prove specific harm in a court of law. Helms's order to shred the documents was, in the cruelest sense, legally effective. And the institutions that participated, the universities, the hospitals, the research foundations, most of them faced no consequences at all. Some of them are still operating today, still receiving federal research funding, still treating patients. MKUltra's legacy isn't just about what the CIA did, it's about what it revealed about the architecture of power in America. The program existed because a small group of men decided that the rules didn't apply to them, that the people they were supposed to serve were, in moments of national necessity, available to be used. That logic didn't die with MKUltra. In 2001, the Patriot Act authorized surveillance programs that operated for years before the public knew they existed. In 2004, Abu Ghraib. In 2007, the Senate Armed Services Committee confirmed that CIA interrogation techniques were directly derived from SERE training, a program that itself drew on research from the MKUltra era. The specific methods change. The underlying logic, that the government can decide, in secret, that some people's rights are negotiable, that logic has a longer half-life than anyone in 1953 anticipated. MKUltra officially ended in 1973, but the question it forces us to ask has never been more relevant. Who watches the watchers? And what happens when the answer is no one? If this story surprised you, subscribe. We release one of these every week. And next time, there's a company that most people have never heard of, that right now, today, controls more of what you eat than any government on Earth. The story of how they got there involves bribery, a secret so explosive it was buried for 40 years, and one whistleblower who paid for the truth with everything she had.